Well, folks, once again, welcome back. Captain Boat Builder here in my basement boatyard. I'd like to welcome you to episode number 7. We're calling this one the Daggerboard Case and Other Stuff. I hope you find it interesting. Again, I'm roughly following the sequence that's in the instruction manual. And wherever I make any little changes, I'll try to be sure and mention them. Some of them are my own ideas. Some of them are ideas from other people. Hope you enjoy it. And once again, number 7, the Daggerboard Case and Other Stuff. I was able to hold the breast hook in position with just one clamp. This edge right along here, to get it to fit just like that. You see how good the fit is? I'm very proud of myself. I'm just sanding a little bit at a time, a little bit at a time. I'm not kidding you, I bet it took me 3 hours just to sand that curve by hand. It only took one clamp to hold it in. The contact between the two pieces is just right. This little, what they call the ugly peak, I'm gonna sand that off. I'm gonna flip the boat over because it'll be easier. I'm gonna put a nice fillet under here along this edge. You could do it just blind, but I think it's easier to flip the boat over. But the breast hook went in just fine, and the reason was I sanded forever. So I'm quite happy with this. In getting ready to cut the stem, I decided that rather than use a pencil line, I would just use this edge on the tape. And it runs from up in here so that I'm going to be cutting ahead of the inner stem. And it runs down here to the cutwater, and the cutwater is the intersection of this plank seam. This is between the top plank and the next plank down, right to here. That's the cutwater. So I wanted to be sure that I didn't cut any further aft than that. So this is the starting point. I've deviated just a little bit from the instruction manual. Rather than doing the very elaborate shaping, marking, rounding to get this thing just about right, we just started filling most of it in with fairing compound and made it nice and thick, and it's actually held in place with packing tape. It won't stick, and that allows you to curve it just a little bit with your fingers. You can see that this is going to take more than one application. Also going to be using the straight edge, using the sanding board, the long board, to make sure that this edge is straight. You can see it has a slight curve in it right now. But I'm not too concerned about the strength of this because the false stem gives it all of the strength, and this particular part of the bow is going to be covered with at least 3 layers of fiberglass. There'll be a piece coming from this side, a piece coming from this side, and a piece running all the way down. So it'll be plenty strong, and I'm just using this fairing compound, sort of rounded out and smooth with packing tape, just to make it a little easier to get a nice smooth curve. Well, I'm starting to put the Daggerboard trunk together, Daggerboard case, I guess you'd call it. The directions are excellent here. These pieces, this is the inside surface here, and this has fiberglass and 3 coats of epoxy. I like to put on 1 extra coat, so I'll have something to sand away. This is what it looks like when it's prepared for gluing. The center section here, this is where the board's going to slide up and down, so it's very smooth. It's hand sanded with a block with 220 paper. The edges right here, where these pieces are going to be glued on, these are hand sanded with 80 grit, so we get a good bond. So these are the pieces for the beginning of the trunk or the case. So here's 1/2 of the Daggerboard case glued up. This, of course, is the inside. It's been coated with 3 coats of epoxy, sanded very, very smooth because the board's going to slide up and down in this trunk. They don't want any scratching. And it's clamped. This will be the front edge and the back edge. But I wanted to show you something that I've done. I had some problems with these panels being slightly warped. And so what I did was I used these cleats, and these are going to be on the outside, of course, And even though it's kind of ugly looking, you won't see it because it's completely covered up by the deck pieces. So what I did was I used tremendous clamping force here on a diagonal, trying to straighten these panels out. And as you can see, it's still just a little bit curved. It's better on this axis. It's just a little bit curved. And what I found was every piece you put on makes it straighter and flatter. These edge pieces right here are taking out some of the curvature. And I think by the time I get it all glued together, the slot will be nice and straight and keep the board straight. But these are just the little steps for gluing together the pieces for the Daggerboard case. Here are the interior panels laid out just like they show in the directions. They're covered with one layer of the 4-ounce cloth. This is the first coat of epoxy. Went on pretty well. I like the color, I like the grain pattern. But one thing that I did do, we'll see if this works, is you'll notice I've nailed the corners down on some of these with little skinny finishing nails because these panels were slightly warped. So I'm hoping that with the fiberglass, and I'm going to put 3 coats of resin on here, I'm hoping that that'll help to eliminate some of the warpage. And we'll just see how this goes, because I'm going to have to get these nails out. I'm hoping that they'll just twist out with pliers, and we'll see. Hope this turned out to be a good plan and not a big mistake. But I did want these panels to be pretty much as flat as possible before I put the glass on them. So now these panels are finished, and you can see, you're looking now at the small panel that is the access port for the main panel in the front. But you can see the panel for the back seat. You can see how it's warped just a little bit. You can see how these panels, they're warped just a tiny bit. You see how they bend. And looking at this, the spear panel, you can see how it's warped just a little bit. What I was hoping was that by nailing them completely flat and putting on fiberglass and lots of resin, I thought maybe the glass would help to stabilize them in the flat position just from the strength of the glass. And I think it's helped. But what I've realized is these panels are pretty flexible, and when you install them in the boat, they're going to bend into the correct position without much trouble. So anyhow, my plan to keep them, get the warp out of them by using the fiberglass, it didn't really do a whole lot. So the manual and me, we both keep talking about the importance of dry fitting the pieces before you actually get the glue mixed up. And I can tell you, the dry fit is really important. Here's the Daggerboard case. And I don't know whether you can see it, but here at the bottom, it is right on that reference mark, the bottom port side. It's right on the reference mark here on the main bulkhead. It's right on the reference mark down here along the center line of the leading edge. And the other thing that's very important in the fit, which took quite a while, is you notice they have a straight edge requirement that goes from this, the top of the forward bulkhead, to the top of the case and to the back of the case. And they want that to be a perfectly straight line with 3 points of contact in the front, in the middle, and at the end. And that's because the deck glues down to this surface, and you want the deck to be perfectly level also. Another thing I did, because I wanted to be sure that the case was properly aligned, is I've gotten out the string. I don't know whether I can hold the camera steady enough. Maybe. But you can see that the string is the center line of the boat from the transom to the bow, to the peak of the bow. And it goes right through the center of the case with no twist or turning whatsoever. So we've got a case that's perfectly straight. And the importance there is that if the case is not straight, the boat will sail differently between tacks because the board won't be straight. So I've done all the dry fitting, took a while, and now I'm getting ready to glue, and this part will be finished. Well, I'm finally finished with the Daggerboard case. As you can see, I used some of the oozed out adhesive. This is the 404 high density adhesive that I mixed with the resin that's holding it in place. As it oozed out, I turned it into little smaller fillets. Another thing I did was I used this green tape. And what I'm doing is pulling the bottom of the trunk, the forward bottom of the trunk, the case, just a little bit to the left to get it to line up just right with these marks. And you can see that I've done the same thing over on this side. It's all in there. It's permanent. And just one last check. I just keep checking. Just checking on the string. Again, I'll try to hold it as steady as I can. But I believe I've been down in the basement here for a couple of hours. And I believe that's about as straight as I can get the case. I think it's going to just work out great. So it took a lot of time. It doesn't look like much, but it's just another piece that's finished. So I decided against the blind fillets for the back seat. And you can see the little cleats that I put in, held in place by tape. And I'll be explaining all this a little bit later, but this is what the little cleats look like in the beginning. This is the underside of the back seat. I've sanded this edge all the way around in preparation for gluing. And I put the reinforcing pieces on here and over here, and I added another one in the center. I just had an extra piece of wood. It was the right size. And I thought, you know, might as well strengthen this up just a little bit. And instead of using the screws, I've used a couple of pieces of wood and some weights to press it down super flat. I think it was easy. And once this gets set up, I'll be putting on a coat of resin on these pieces just to make sure that they're completely sealed. So that part is finished. And then I wanted to show you what I've done back here where the seat is actually going to be mounted. I've used the guide piece for the blind fillet. You can see it across the transom here, and it's in the little guide holes. I've used this as a guide for figuring out where I wanted the little cleats. See, I've got cleats all the way around. And the reason I decided to use the cleats instead of the blind filleting process, which to me looked like it was a beautiful solution to this problem, a good way to secure the back deck, and also quite attractive. But as you can see here in the back, or underneath the back seat, where I've done my fiberglass tape work, it's not especially neat. And even though I want this boat to be as beautiful as possible, I realized that this part of the boat is going to be permanently sealed and no one will ever see it. So my tape work is a little bit rough, but complete. I've got the cleats in place and they're just at the right height, and I'll be able to put the seat in place pretty soon after the reinforcing pieces are dried, and then I can glue it in place and the seat will be finished. Well, I'm finally finishing up the back seat. As you can see, I'm using the tape as I did before to take care of the edges of the fillets. Looks like the fillets are they're working out really nice. I'm pleased with the color, pleased with the general shape. I'll be pulling the tape off soon. I don't want it to set up and then I'll never get the tape off. Also wanted to show you that I decided with this edge right here, I decided not to fiberglass this edge. It's going to be heavily saturated and coated with multiple coats of epoxy to protect it, but I'm just going to take care of it. I didn't want the fiberglass edge, even though it's a lot more durable. And you can see here that you can see how the end grain has soaked up the resin, and I did my best to just give it a nice round off by hand, and a couple more coats of resin take care of that absorption, and it should be a real nice edge. So the seat's pretty much done. So folks, that pretty much brings us to the end of this video. And just as a little preview, little teaser of the next video, I wanted to show you a picture of this completed section of the boat. This is one of the most important structural sections of the boat. Took a lot of work, and I'll show you how we get there. So once again, thanks for watching.